This is the Special Needs Awareness Program. For those of you who do not know who I am, my name is Skyler Phillips. I'm a captain on Quint 21 Red Shift out in East Brainerd. I'm also the father of a child with autism, as you can see. The reason we started this class was after about 2 years ago, some of you may remember we did the pancake breakfast for my son. And the community came together, firefighters came together, and everyone rallied around us, and we were able to raise $15,000 in about 3 months. I was blown away at the support. I felt like we needed to do something to give back. So, after my 14 years in the fire department, EMT training, paramedic degree, I realized that I'd never had a class that dealt with special needs. And so I sat down, I talked to Lisa Mathias with Lifeline, and we basically wrote this class. This class took about a year to write. I did all the legwork for the first responder side. She is the special needs expert. I'm not a special needs expert by any stretch of the imagination. I am a firefighter just like you guys, and that is why I'm here. You know, I feel like that gives me, you know, a little more insight into what you guys do, and I can make the class a little better just because of that. So that is why we are here. This is my family. My wife, Melissa. This is our youngest son. He's about 2.5. His name's Elliot. As far as we know as of right now, Elliot is neurotypical. He is a very typical terrible twos right now. But anyway, it definitely makes having a child with special needs a lot more challenging. But this is Noah. Noah was born January 18, 2011. He is 6 years old. At about 2.5, we took him to Disney World. And when we came back, we went in for his routine physical with the doctor, and the doctor's all talking to him and asking him questions. And she says, so how did you like Disney World? And he said, yes. She said, what was your favorite part? Who was your favorite character? He said, yes. She said, are you ready to go back? He said, yes. Then she looked at us with those, you know, serious doctor eyes, and she said, you know, this isn't typical behavior. And my wife asked her right there, do you think he has autism? And she said, I think you need to see a developmental pediatrician and find out. So months and months and months later, you know, it takes forever to go through all that stuff. After months and months, we finally get our test results, and it is autism. He has excessive receptive language disorder and sensory processing disorder. And his life is a challenge. There are things that he does that are challenging, and one of the things that's going to make his life easier is this service dog that, you know, everyone helped us get, which we leave in 6 days to go get, I might add. We're very excited about that. But it's not a tragedy, it's just a challenge. It's just, you know, our lives are a little different, and we want to share with you, I want to show you a few things that make our life different. So when you encounter someone like this on the streets, on the calls, you know, maybe you might have a little better idea of, a little better understanding of what's going on. So for this class, Noah is what we call a little black ball that doesn't bounce. All right, everyone can look at this and see that this is a black ball, right? Probably made of rubber. What's going to happen if I drop it? It's going to bounce. And it does. Of course it does. And the reason you know, everybody in here knew that it was going to bounce before I dropped it, because you have 2 brain cells in the back of your head. And their only job is to tell you when you see a ball like this that it's going to bounce. It's its only job. Then every now and then something comes along, looks the same size, probably made out of rubber, but it doesn't bounce. And that is what we call Noah. Noah is a little black ball that doesn't bounce. He looks like every other 6-year-old you'll ever see. He enjoys the same things that 6-year-olds enjoy, but it won't take long to realize in a sensory or an overstimulated situation that he's different and that we're going to have to treat him different. And we'll talk more about that as we go through the class. This is Lisa. Lisa is the co-writer, co-author of this class. This is her daughter Caroline, her husband Jeff, and her daughter Emily. And as you can see, Emily is not a little black ball that doesn't bounce, right? It's very easy to tell, looking at all this hardware, that Emily has special needs. Emily was born with spina bifida and hydrocephalus. Since then, over the last 17 years, she has been diagnosed with nearly 30 different diagnoses. She has very challenging things she goes through, but you know, that's why Lisa decided to start Lifeline Ministries, was because there was really nowhere for anyone like her to turn to. There were disability-specific classes out there. There were things that, resources, but there wasn't anything that basically crossed the multiple diagnoses. So she started Lifeline Incorporated. All right, so unless you've been hiding under a rock, you know that special needs has been in the newspaper a lot, right? Been in the news, been social media, all those things. It's been a big topic lately, right? Most of it good? No, most of it is bad. Most of it is bad experiences. The North Miami incident, everybody remember that? Gentleman walking through the streets playing with a toy fire truck. Caretaker trying to get him back to the group home. The police get involved. The caretaker is laying on the ground pleading. Couldn't be given up anymore if he had a sign that said, "I give up," waving a white flag. Couldn't have been doing anything else. And the police officer shot him. Y'all remember that? There was a man with a camera that walked up to the police officer and he said, "Hey, why'd you shoot him?" Anybody know what he said? "I don't know." That was his answer. "I don't know." So for reasons like that, we want to have training like this. We want to be proactive before we're reactive. We don't want to be doing this because something bad happened. We want to be doing this to prevent something bad from happening. And this class is not a fix. I'm not telling you that how to take care of a situation or how to take care of a person so much as I am telling you how to make the call go smoother, right? We want the call to be as smooth as possible. So most of the information that we'll share today crosses multiple disabilities. I may mention specific disabilities, and I'll talk about Noah a lot, who has autism, but it's not just about autism. It's about multiple disabilities. It crosses multiple diagnoses. The goals and purposes of this class: to understand challenges faced by families and how that impacts their interaction with first responders. I've told every class that I've taught, unless you live this world, you have no idea what it's like. And even after this class, you'll have a better understanding, but you still won't be able to have the understanding that, that someone who lives it will have. So we want to try to give you a little bit better understanding. That's really all we're trying to do. Understand the prevalence of disability among those who need first responder services. Most people who see this are really blown away, and you guys probably will be too. Understand potential responses of someone overwhelmed by sensory stimulation. We'll talk a little bit about that. Understand potential triggers for someone in an emergent situation and ways to reduce those triggers. We'll talk about that. Understand considerations for verbal exchanges and interactions with a person with a disability. Would you know how to talk to someone? If you saw them and you felt like pretty good chance that they had a disability, would you know what to say? And we'll give you some things to say and how to make those go smoother. Understand considerations for verbal exchanges and interactions with family and caregivers to someone with special needs. This is a very, you talk about mama bears. These are the mama bears, the caregivers of these people, the parents. So you want to be able to say the right thing. You want to be able to say, talk to them the way they want to be talked to, and we'll give you some of that information to help you get through the call a little bit better. Understand multiple de-escalation techniques. I'll show you some de-escalation trainings and some easy ways to be able to try to de-escalate a situation. Understand ways to identify someone with special needs who may or may not be using mobility equipment and have other obvious signs. The little black ball that doesn't bounce, right? How would you know? How would you know if you saw Noah? You saw the picture of him, you saw what he looks like. How would you know if you saw him that he had a special need, that he had autism? It could be challenging, but there's ways to do it, and we'll talk about those. Understand ways that search and rescue operations may change when involving a person with a disability. I understand that we don't do much search and rescue, right? Or search, so to speak. We don't do much searching for people, but we're just as likely as anybody to do it. So they could call us at any minute to go look for someone who had wandered off. And there are certain things that you can do that will look different than if it was just a typical search. There are two components to SNAP. The first is what we're doing today, first responder training, fire, police, medical personnel, anyone that'll listen. The second aspect is parent caregiver training. We're not just doing it for you guys. We want the parents to know what you guys are going to be looking for, what you expect when you show up. If they already call, what kind of things to have ready, right? Make the call go smoother. That's the whole point. That's what we want to try to get across. All right, so the prevalence of the disability. It wasn't that long ago that these people, or some of these people, would be institutionalized, right? They didn't get them out into public. They put them in a building on the corner of town, and they all lived there together. And it couldn't be any further from that today, right? Today, we practice what they call inclusion, and it's the be-all to end-all for the special needs population, especially for the children. You know, you may see my son acting like that out in public, and I don't apologize for it, because it's my job to raise him and train him to be as productive a citizen as possible, and I'll do that at any cost. And inclusion is the way to do that, getting them out in public, seeing what the world looks like that's not made for them. You know, this world is not made for people who think differently. So, you know, teaching it to them early is the best way to do that. At this point in time, 17 to 20% of the United States lives with some developmental disability or intellectual disability. The CDC just released a study in 2015 that showed that Tennessee was ranked second among the highest population of people with disabilities in the country. 31.4% of Tennessee lives with some type of disability. And that means that you are at or above more likely to run into someone with a disability than any other firefighter in the country. So just keep that in mind, that this is out there and you guys are a lot more likely to run into it than anybody. So the first statistic we want to talk about is autism. And there's a lot of back and forth about autism, you know, numbers, this, that, and the other. Right now, the current number released by the CDC is 1 in 68. I've read that, you know, that number is growing at a rate of 7 to 10% a year. Some of that has to do with the way the DSM diagnoses autism. Some of it is that it's growing faster than any other developmental disability in the world. You know, nobody really knows the reason. There are lots of speculations. I heard one lady say that if it continues at the rate it's growing by 2020, the number will be 1 in 11, and by 2025 it'll be 1 in 2. Now that's probably not the most realistic number, but that's just somebody that crunches numbers for a living that's not taking a lot of the epidemiology into it. But, you know, the number's there. So just keep that in mind. The numbers are, regardless of what the numbers are or will be, they're growing very rapidly, and we need to be prepared to deal with it. Intellectual disabilities. 1 in 10 families in the U.S. are directly affected at some point in their lifetime with an intellectual disability. The federal definition of an intellectual disability is someone with an IQ below 70 that develops their disability before the age of 18. So that's why it's worded like that. This may not be something that they have at birth. It could be something that comes along afterwards, before the age of 18. So this type of disabilities are Down syndrome is considered a intellectual disability. Fetal alcohol syndrome, shaken baby, anoxic brain injuries, traumatic brain injuries, you know, some type of accident or something like that. Or it could be a stroke. I remember doing a ride-along with, when I was in paramedic school, a 13-year-old had a stroke. So, you know, it could be any of those things. Spina bifida, 4 in 10,000. Down syndrome, 1 in 691. Epilepsy seizures, 1 in 26 over a lifetime. You know, there's probably 26 people in this room right now. One of us will have a seizure over our lifetime. That's pretty crazy. You could have a seizure today and never have another one. Or you could develop epilepsy tomorrow. You know, you just never know. So that's some information. That's something, you know, kind of some scary information. Cerebral palsy, 1 in 323 children been identified with CP. Mental health, 1 in 5. You know, we see that a lot, right? We deal a lot with mental health. 1 in 25 experience serious mental health over their lifetime. Serious mental health is defined as someone who has to have medical attention because of their mental illness. Estimated 26% of adults staying in homeless shelters have serious mental illness. Estimated 46% live with severe mental illness, and 20 to 21% in local jails. So those are some big numbers. All right, so the assessment. Remember what we talked about, you know, how are we going to be able to tell? Sometimes it's not easy to tell, you know, whether someone has a disability or not just by looking at them. So we want to go over a few things that can help you. If you see a service animal, you're going to know right away that this is probably somebody with a disability. You know, most of the time when we think of service animal, we think of a seeing eye dog, right? That's what most of us have experienced in our lives, but these days, you know, service animals are becoming more and more readily available to people with other disabilities. People with epilepsy have service dogs. Diabetes, you see the little papillons for diabetics. Autism, like I said, my son will get his in 6 days. PTSD is another big one. So when you see these service dogs, you just know right off the bat that this is somebody that we need to take special attention or pay special attention to. Medical ID bracelets, not very common. You see them from time to time. I've seen a few, but it's not something that's very common. You'd flip this over, look on the back side, and it'll give you the information about that person. Probably what we're more likely to see than a medical ID bracelet or a service dog is this right here, an ID. Some of them have an ID instead of a driver's license. And again, none of these are across the board, right? All of these things are tools to put in a toolbox. So when you come across these people, start checking some of these things off that we're talking about. If you see somebody that has an ID instead of a driver's license, we all need something with our name on it, right? We all need something with our picture on it. We all need something to be able to go to the bank and do stuff with, but may not be able to drive. So a lot of these guys have an ID instead of a driver's license. Some of the medical ID bracelets are getting prettier. They're not necessarily the big gaudy, dainty, big gaudy piece of jewelry. Now you've got these cute little dainty little things that may just have that one little thing on there, and you flip that over and it'll have some information on the back of it. So just be aware that these things are out there. The ICE on your phone, these are becoming more and more popular. The iPhone 6s are above in the health app on the iPhone 6s are above, and then the Android equivalent. You'll see these things where they can take and they can make it where while the phone, even with the phone locked, you can touch these and it pulls up that person's information. I was at Walmart before Christmas, didn't have either one of my boys with me, walking out the door, and crowd of people rushed past me and get out there, and the bell ringer had a seizure. He had a seizure right there in front of the door, and I walked up to the lady who had the notepad that was taking the notes that seemed to be in charge, and I said, "Hey, I'm a paramedic. Is there anything I can do?" And she was very grateful for me stopping. I stopped and talked to him, and he was obviously post-ictal. He had obviously had a seizure. He was fine at this point. When he fell backwards, his phone fell out of his pocket. I picked the phone up, looked at his phone, and it said ICE. I touched it, pulled up the information for his sister. I was able to call her, get her on her way. She was very familiar with what he was doing and his medical conditions, and was on his way before the ambulance even got on scene. So be looking for these, and not necessarily for people with developmental or intellectual disabilities. This could be for anybody that you run across. If they're unconscious or what have you, a lot of people are putting this information in their phones, regardless. So just know that that's there and be on the lookout. Medical tattoos, I've never seen one, but they're out there. So be aware that might be something that you run across. All right, so this is where we get into the kind of what I like to call the meat and potatoes of the assessment. We're trying to figure out the people the little black balls that don't bounce, right? So the little boy looks up at the person and says, "Do you want a drink of water?" And the little boy looks back and says, "Do you want a drink of water?" It's repeating back to him what you said. And it may not be that he's repeating it exactly. It may be that he manipulates some of the words. Maybe he's even getting a point across with that. But this is how some people talk, every day for everything. They're not able to form their own, to initiate their own language skills. They don't have any self-initiation. So this is how they talk. Unsteady gait, awkward movement. You see some of those people that have trouble walking. It may be that there's nothing wrong with their brain. It may be that there's nothing wrong with their feet, but there's some type of disconnect in between there. So they know where they want to go. They know how to get there. Their brains just don't function smoothly or maybe in the appropriate order to get there, one foot in front of the other, the things that we don't even think about. So that could be a problem for some folks. Speaks too low, too loud, monotone, hard to understand, or slurred. There is a man that does horse riding therapy with my son, and he screams everywhere he goes. So he'll walk up to my little boy who's 2 and say, "Hi, Elliot, how are you?" And Elliot will crawl under the chair, because he's scared to death because this man's screaming at him. But that's something. That's another tool that you can check off, right? Put that in your toolbox. If you see that they're having an unsteady gait, and you see that they're talking too loud or they're slurring their words, this could also be somebody who's drunk, right? So we're really going to have to pay attention and focus on some other things to make sure to make the appropriate assessment. Echolalia, we just talked about that. Dressed inappropriately for the weather. It could be that they don't have the ability to look out the window and see that there's snow on the ground or see that it's sunny or whatever. They may not have the ability to look up the Weather Channel, see what the temperature is going to be like. Or it could be that same disconnect that we were talking about. They don't feel weather the same way we do. What's hot to us may be cold to them. What's cold to them may be hot to us, right? So you see somebody with this awkward or unsteady gait, speaks too loud, and maybe now they're wearing flip-flops or short sleeves in the wintertime, you know. There's a few things, you know, you can start putting these things together, that maybe this is somebody who has a developmental or an intellectual disability. Large buttons or snaps, Velcro, no buttons, no snaps, elastic waist, sweatpants, nothing that would require fine motor control. If my son had to use fine motor control, if that was his only way to get around, he would never be able to leave the house because he just can't do it. His school requires that he wear uniform pants. And those pants have the type of snap that slides, the metal piece slides into the receiving metal piece and holds the pants up. Well, he can't do that. He does not have the fine motor control to slide that across there. So he would have no self-toileting skills. He wouldn't be able to go to the bathroom on his own. So what we did is I take a piece of Velcro and I'll sew a piece of Velcro over one piece of the metal. And then I'll take the opposing piece of Velcro and sew it to the other piece. So now all he has to do is zip his pants up and touch them together, and he can go to the bathroom on his own. That's all it takes to you know, get over that hurdle. So those are the kinds of things that you want to be looking for. You see somebody that has Velcro on their pants or their shoes or sweatpants or things like that. You know, those are just more things that we can add to our toolbox. Slurring words, staggering is not necessarily a sign of drunkenness. You know, it wasn't that long ago that everybody who swerved their car, wrecked in a ditch, got out staggering, all that stuff, you know, they went straight to jail, right? Then we found out we were throwing people in jail that had a blood sugar of 18, 19, 20. You know, so we started having to reassess how we're doing things. Maybe we need to step back and take a look at this isn't exactly cut and dry as it used to be. And we're getting back to that, you know. Just because somebody's staggering, slurring their words, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're drunk. So let's take a step back, look at what they're wearing, look at what they're doing, all of those things. You know, you can put all these things together to determine whether this is somebody who has a developmental or an intellectual disability versus someone who is drunk or maybe on drugs. Another thing to remember is hand motions. All right, hand motions are a big part of some of these guys' lives. And you'll see this young lady right here. This adorable young lady has Rett syndrome, and with Rett syndrome, she wrings her hands all day, every day. If you ever see her, she'll be doing this all day, every day. Some of these guys, you'll see flapping motion. You'll see things like that. So we want to make sure that, you know, if you've put a few of these things together, you know, maybe an unsteady gait or maybe some Velcro on their pants or sweatpants, or they're talking loudly, or you know, you put all that together and then they start doing these hand motions. Don't assume that they're being hostile or non-compliant. You know, we need to start looking at, this may be somebody with a disability, and we need to step back and address things differently. All right, so what are they doing? What is that? What is the flapping? Why are they doing that? That's known as stimming, all right, or self-stimulation. So basically the way it works is, you know, we're sitting here and we're talking, we're all listening, you all are listening to me intently, but while you're listening to me, there's other things going on, right? There's a call from across the room, there's cars going down Amnicola Highway, there's the fan from the projector, there's people talking out in the hallway, there's lights flickering, there's cold air, some people are cold, some people are hot. There's all of this other stuff that's going on, right, at the same time. Why do you not hear any of that? Why do you not pay any attention to that? Because our brains can filter all that stuff out. It knows that I'm listening to what this man's saying and we're looking at what he's showing me. I'm not listening to all that other stuff going on. You don't even pay attention. You don't even think about it. And some of these guys have a challenge. That's a challenge for them. And all of this other information that's coming in is going to be as loud or louder than what I'm saying. So the filtering and ignoring for some of these guys is very hard for them. So as that information, all of this information is coming in, the lights, the fan, the cars going by, the coughing, the people talking, all of that is coming in at the same level, and it can be overwhelming for them. So what they do is they'll start figuring out ways to stimulate themselves, self-stimulation. Basically, output blocks input. See what I'm saying? So they'll start flapping, or they'll start doing things like that to try to block some of that that information that's too much for them, that they can't filter out. What stimming can look like, flapping. I was trying to show you some of that a minute ago. You may see these hand movements. Noah flaps back here. You may see anything, any kind of flapping of the hands whatsoever. I'll show you a video in just a minute of a gentleman who flaps all the time. Jumping. Noah will flap and jump, running across the room, back and forth. Before we had Elliot, he would run from one end of the house to the other, just back and forth, flapping like crazy. And then we got Elliot, we had to put baby gates up. And so then he would look like a little pinball. We felt sorry for him, so we bought him an exercise trampoline. So now he runs and hits the exercise trampoline and runs back. You may have saw it in that video. It stays in our living room. It's a permanent fixture in our living room. And, you know, he runs and hits it and runs back, runs and hits it and runs back. And that's how he stimulates himself at home. Swinging, you see there's a lot of swinging involved. And for some of these people, you'll see these therapy swings and things like that. Noah loves to swing. We'll talk about some more of that in a minute. Twirling of themselves or objects. Wheels, you may see them pick up a Hot Wheels car and sit there and spin it and just watch it over and over and over, just spin it. You know, or those fidget things now, you may see them just sit there and spin them and watch them. Just look at them, all just intently, just focusing on what's going on. We used to take Noah out on his cozy coop. We'd push him down the street. He'd hang his head out the window of the cozy coop watching the wheels spin around and around. But now think about someone like this. You know, Noah has absolutely no sense of fear whatsoever, none. Just imagine somebody that has no sense of fear, enjoys wheels, and lives on the side of Highway 58. You know, what a dangerous situation that could be. So these are the kind of things that these families have to deal with on a regular basis. Rocking, very stereotypical autism behavior. You'll see that rocking back and forth. You know, that's a lot of guys, you know, especially in the autism world, do that. Clapping. Noah, when he gets excited, he starts clapping. You know, there's a stimulation from the sound and the actual jarring of your hands hitting together. That force on each other, you know, of your hands hitting together is very, very soothing for them. Tics similar to Tourette's, and then there's chewing, which is probably the bane of the mother's existence. You'll see these young guys or girls walking around. They'll have a brand new shirt on, and then it'll be hanging out of their mouth like that, and they'll chew the collar up, or they'll chew the sleeve up, walking down the hall like this. And they'll get home and it looks like a dog got a hold of their shirt, and they'll have to throw it away and get another one. So, you know, that's the kind of things that we have to deal with. You may see that they have some kind of necklace or something that they chew on, that just hanging out of their mouth all the time. Getting that stimulation in their jaws, that deep pressure from chewing in their jaws. Sudden or jerky movements, we talked about that awkward gait. Walking on tiptoes, again, same thing, you know, that disconnect. They know where they go, they know where they want to go. It's just that smooth interaction making it happen. Maybe some of the information is getting turned around or whatever makes them walk on their tiptoes. Distracted or unaware of their surroundings. It may be that they're looking at the ceiling tiles. They may be trying to make shapes out of the designs in the ceiling tiles. Who knows? They may be looking at something that you don't even know is in the room, you know, that you're not even paying attention to. Eye contact. I know you guys have seen this. A lot of people have challenges with the eye contact. You'll see them look over your head or over your shoulder, just off center of your face. They don't want to look you in the eyes. Some people say it's like sticking daggers in their eyes. They feel very uncomfortable for them. Other people say they feel like they can see your brain. You know, that's another uncomfortableness for them. I read about one guy who said that it's like turning down the radio when you're looking for an address, right? I can't listen to you and look you in the eye at the same time, just like I can't listen to the radio and look for the address that I'm looking for at the same time. So that's part of the thing with the eye contact. Flat emotion or flat affect, you may see that. I'll show you a video of a young man with an intellectual disability here in just a few minutes that has a very flat affect. You know, that's not necessarily all the time. Again, none of this stuff is all the time. This is just tools to be looking for, some more assessment tools like we were talking about. And then self-care and hygiene challenges. You know, we've all seen these people that maybe they don't smell like we would like them to, or, you know, maybe they don't brush their teeth like that we would like them to. But think about if every time you got in the shower, it felt like you were being, you know, had hot embers being rained down on you. You know, how many showers would you take? Or if every time you went to brush your teeth, it felt like you were dragging a wheel brush across your face. You know, how often would you brush your teeth? Lisa talks about Emily was very hard to get her to brush her teeth. She only has 2 working appendages, and if her husband wasn't home, Emily's teeth didn't get brushed. That's as big a challenge as it was for Emily. It took 2 of them to brush her teeth every single night. So for a lot of these people have these challenges, and it's not because they're lazy or they don't want to do these things. It's because it's a sensory thing. It can cause physical pain or physical uncomfortableness for them. So just keep that in mind. Sensory integration disorder, sensory processing disorder, sensory integration dysfunction